Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. My name is Liam Maroney, and I am the Demand Generation Manager here at NewsCred. And today I am joined by my colleague and our Brand Marketing Manager, Alexa Bialy. So in today's webinar, we're actually going to be taking an introspective look at our own marketing, what we've learned and where we're going to go in 2016, and hopefully we can impart some things on how you can succeed with your content marketing. So just some quick housekeeping tips. The webinar is set to last about 40-45 minutes, and we're going to take some questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, just use the chat box and enter them at any stage throughout the webinar. And of course, we do encourage you to join us on social, so by using our handle @NewsCred and our hashtag ThinkContent. And just to go through it, in today's webinar, we're actually going to break it into 5 different sections. I'm going to cover all of the major points on how we do content marketing. So we're going to go through how we think about it, how we create it, how we distribute it, and then ultimately how we measure success from it. Now, before we dive into these points, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand you over to Alexa, and she's going to give you a little background on where we were last year and how we got to where we are today with all this strategy.
Thanks, Liam. So some of you may remember that we hosted a similar webinar about a year ago when we presented our 2014 and 2015 case study. For those of you who are not on it and need a refresher, I wanted to give a brief overview of what we covered there and how that influenced our strategy today. With so many huge players in the content marketing space, we realized that we needed to stop marketing to brands and instead start connecting with people in order to differentiate ourselves. So in April 2014, we completely overhauled our content marketing strategy, and the results were overwhelmingly positive. From 2014 to 2015, we saw a 49% increase in unique visitors by increasing our original content production week over week. We saw an 800% ROI, yes, that is actually the real number, 800% ROI for just one white paper. And this was taking into consideration the production costs associated with that and how it laddered up to the 400 leads and 3 opportunities that we were seeing on average from producing just one white paper. And then once converted to a customer, we saw a 41% increase in renewals, a 33% increase in upsells, and a 24% higher MRR than average. And all of this equaled to about $72 million in customer lifetime value, which was pretty incredible. And today, the marketing team drives 40% of NewsCred's revenue on a first-touch basis and influences 100% of our deals. And even better, since we are, after all, a content marketing company, content marketing has proved to be our most cost-efficient channel. And for every $1 we put in, we get $14 out.
So when we take what we learned in 2014 and 15, what we see is that great content leads to greater human connections. And so we've actually expanded on that by putting content at the core of our marketing strategy. Now, even though this sounds simple, it had a major shift in how we approach the bigger picture. So instead of starting with our channel strategies and our demand gen strategies, we started with content first, and we built our content marketing strategy around that. And this is a very important point to touch on. Many organizations see marketing as a cost center, when in fact, really, it should be seen as a revenue driver. But the trouble is that most marketers focus on vanity metrics like page views, shares, traffic. And while these things are absolutely important, what they fail to do is to tie to the KPIs that your CMO and your CEO actually care about. In fact, what you should really focus on are business goals. Well, you all know that revenue is what ultimately you need to prove. The big question is, how do you work backwards to get there? And at NewsCred, we've built this framework that enables us to measure the right things consistently and figure out if our efforts are working. So what we've done is we've broken into 3 categories. The first is brand awareness and brand health. And the questions are, is your content driving early-stage prospects to you, and how do they feel about you? And this is where the metrics like paid versus organic traffic, page views, articles viewed, engagement rate come into effect. But then secondary, what's important is conversions. And the question is your content actually turning prospects into customers? And this is where your marketing automation software and your CRMs come into play with subscriptions, the lead by channel, looking at your cost per opportunity. And then finally, and we're going to touch on this later on, is retention is a big thing. And the question is your content driving retention and upsells? So here's an example of the framework in action. When we think about conversions, which is a big KPI that helps us prove our revenue impact, we look at conversions across the entire sales funnel. So we start at intent and we ask ourselves, are people taking actions that are an actual indicator of their interest in NewsCred? An example of this is our visitors going from our Insights content hub towards the NewsCred website, to our software page, and to our pricing page. And then secondary, we've got action. Now, we do track leads subscribers to our newsletter, but we don't actually count newsletter subscribers as leads themselves. Instead, what we actually require subscribers to have to fill out is an additional form with more information on who they are. And what this enables us to do then is to ensure that our leads have more engaged interest. And more importantly, it makes sure that they're actually relevant. And this is the big question. We measure MQLs, marketing qualified leads, and we ask constantly, do these people actually matter to our sales team? Do they convert into opportunities? We ask, how does our content marketing channel compare to our other channels, whether it's events, AdWords, sales outbound, referrals. We constantly measure the actual effectiveness of content marketing in our pipeline. And then obviously we look at ROI, where we look at the number of deals and we compare the cost per opportunity and deal against our other channels. And the trick is to measure content marketing effectiveness against your other channels and how it's growing and improving over time. Now, this kind of analysis wouldn't be possible without the right marketing tech infrastructure. All of our data is connected and integrated between our content marketing software, shameless plug for NewsCred right here, and our marketing automation software, in our case Marketo, and our CRM, which is in our case Salesforce. And we look and we track everything. We make sure that we have the right UTM parameters. We make sure that everything's assigned to equal campaigns. We make sure we have costs against everything. And what this enables us to do is to understand how contact impacts deals and how channels impact deals as well. And it also enables us to bring in cost information. And having the right tech infrastructure and having the right framework to measure ROI actually enables us to get some really cool insights. So for example, we've found that leads that have engaged with content are twice as likely to accept a meeting from us. And the average NewsCred prospect engages with 20 pieces of content before they become a customer. This is a combination of white papers, webinars like this one, reading our newsletters, engaging with our nurturing emails, and even attending our offline events. And we can do a lot with this information. For example, knowing that the average customer engages with 20 pieces of content enables us to figure out which content actually converts people at each stage of the funnel, so we can focus on delivering that content even more. But of course, having the right infrastructure is only as good as the content you fill it with, and I'm going to let Alexa talk to that point.
Yeah, so here, this is all about how to create the content that your audience actually wants. So your content strategy is really all about the value exchange between your brand and your audience. And the content that you develop should always be in the intersection of your brand's purpose and your audience's interests. Taking a look at the Venn diagram here, we have the brand on the left saying, I'm great, because all brands think they're pretty great. But looking at the right side of the diagram, we have what our customers want, and sometimes that might be looking at pictures of puppies. I mean, who doesn't want that? I certainly do. So what brands need to do to bridge this gap is to be able to talk about a variety of topics that surround your brand or industry and that appeals to your customers. And one of my favorite examples is GoPro. And if you go on the GoPro website, their founder and CEO, Nicholas Woodman, explains that GoPro helps people capture and share their lives' most meaningful experiences and celebrate them together. And what their customers want is action, adventure, and ultimately to film something awesome like kayaking down a waterfall or skiing off a cliff. And where their content marketing lies is using a lot of that user-generated content and creating their own content that ladders up to what their customers want while getting their brand purpose of sharing memories out there. And if you're looking at this and saying, well, this is great, but my brand is already producing lots of content, you still need to understand if your existing content is resonating or not. And brands who already understand content marketing should be focused on answering the question, how can I make my content better? So to do that, you need to stop guessing what to write about. And the way to do this is to build a framework to make that decision process easy. So taking a look at the same Venn diagram, the brand side is all about who you want to be and what do we want to be known for, while the customer side is all about looking at the data and understanding what your customers truly want. And this will help you make better informed content decisions. And we've heard this statistic before, but 70% of the buyer's journey happens before the decision-making stage. So you need content to guide that information and the purchasing process down the funnel. Here at NewsCred, we found that there are 3 content types that always perform well: practical stories and best practices, data-driven trend or research pieces, and exclusive interviews or profile pieces with CMOs or other influencers. Taking a look at our top performing content on the right, there's a healthy mix of content that falls into one of these three formats, while laddering up to our 6 content categories of management, measurement, inspiration, industry leaders, audience, and strategy. And when in doubt of what to write, there's always the tried and true gut check of, would I share this article with my smartest friend? And the answer should be absolutely hell yes. And if it is hell yes, then fantastic, you're doing it right, keep doing what you're doing. And this is something that we believe so firmly in, that we created a content scorecard in our own product to make sure that we're hitting these benchmarks and keeping ourselves accountable. The scorecard looks exactly like this. Feel free to take screenshots along the way. And all of the content that NewsCred produces needs to have a strong topic, be in the right format, and adhere to our voice and style guide. In our system, each piece of content, before it goes out the door, needs to hit a score of 24 out of a possible 33 points. 33 means that we have hit every single standard we could possibly think of. This is the best piece of content we can produce. And to be realistic, while not every piece of content needs to have a perfect score, it does need to have the elements that enable it to create a winning content formula and make sure that it will be successful once published. And to take it one step further, I wanted to take a closer look at a recent piece of data-driven content that drove high engagement and traffic for us. There are a ton of Snapchatters in the NewsCred office, and myself, I'm very much included in that. And as a marketer, we also wanted to answer the burning question, does marketing on Snapchat actually work, and do consumers interact with what brands are putting out there? So we decided to survey Snapchat users to find this out. This January, we published an article called How Consumers Really Use Snapchat, complete with an infographic, as you can see here, as a part of it, created by our friends at Column 5. We had about a month to plan for this one piece of content and strategically timed its publishing date to coincide with the buzz around Snapchat campaigns with the Super Bowl. And as you can see here, 30% of brands were planning to include Snapchat in their Super Bowl campaigns. This was something that was getting a lot of organic buzz naturally. And what we found through our survey was that while the majority of people were engaging with the app on a daily basis, they were rarely interacting with branded filters, Snapchat Discover, or promoted live stories. They were really using the platform to share photos and videos with friends. And as soon as we published this, and in less than 2 months, this story received 20 PR features and over 6,000 shares. And more impressively, it made its way into our top 5 pieces of content of all time. And when we took a step back and we analyzed why did this do so well, it really was the magic formula of careful planning, adhering to our content framework. It was topical, relevant, it had a strong point of view, it was SEO optimized, and it was creative and visual. And of course, choosing the strategic publishing date also really helped garner some extra eyeballs and readers because it was already piling on something that was being talked about and a moment in time that we really wanted to get involved with.
So once you've created great content, it's vital that you're delivering it in the most effective way. And so we obsess over understanding which channels perform the strongest and then optimizing those channels. And our newsletter, for example, which we distribute 3 times a week, delivers up to 40% of our blog traffic. So understanding what makes it work is essential to our success. And we never stop testing it. And just recently, actually, we did an audit on 2 years' worth of newsletters. So what we looked at was a total of 24 million newsletters that we sent out to try and understand some key insights about what made our newsletter really succeed. And we actually found out some fascinating things about our readers. Now, while these findings are going to differ from your own readers, what's important is to know the answers to some of the key questions. And we ask questions like, what are the best times of the day to send a newsletter? What days of the week are most effective? What topics resonate the most with our readers? What subject lines provided the most open rates? Were there any words that improved or actually hurt open rates? And what sort of questions people wanted answered in our newsletter? And knowing what makes your top channel perform and focusing on these elements is a key to driving content marketing success. Now, while your top of funnel channels are vital, don't ignore your middle and bottom of funnel channels either. So in our case, webinars, like the one that you're all now on, is a great way for us to connect with our blog subscribers. In fact, when we host a webinar, 20% of our registrants are subscribers who filled out a secondary form. But when we talk about delivering content the way your audience wants it, there's no substitute for a quality content hub. And that's something that we focused very heavily on over the last year.
So we've asked ourselves, how do we deliver a one-of-a-kind experience? We know that owned properties matter because this is the point of conversion. All of our social publishing drives back to our website, so it's our job to create the most engaging experience we possibly can. And we thought a lot about what is this experience. And we did extensive user testing and asked our community what they really wanted. And we found out some very, very interesting things here. They wanted to be told what to do. They wanted structured learning and lessons, but they wanted the ability to change paths and preferences on the fly. They also wanted an element of self-discovery where they still have the flexibility to browse around and choose content as they please. And then the one really surprising thing we found is that our audience thinks of community as a feeling, not a feature. They don't really care about commenting in the traditional community sense, like a message board. They want to feel like part of a club. And we decided to achieve this by integrating our online and offline content strategy and creating a real VIP experience. So we came up with Insights. This is our brand new educational content hub, and we launched it exactly a week ago to the day. And this merged our existing blog with our academy, which is our high-value content library. The goal was to reinvent the way people learn, and to create a product that makes education fun, that is tailored to people's needs, and that is personalized. And we realized that every blog and resource portal pretty much looks and functions exactly the same. And we wanted to disrupt the status quo by creating something beautiful while making the experience intuitive and designed with the user in mind. So here's what it looks like when you sign in. You have your personalized dashboard, and you have content that's selected for you based on topics that you choose. And it's also personalized that you have your likes so you can go through and discover content that you want to take a look at or come back and read later. And we really thought about this using the Spotify model. So you go onto Spotify, you can create playlists, you can choose your music, and you can come in and out as you please. And that's something we felt very strongly about when designing this new portal with the user in mind. And so far, we've received wonderful feedback, so thank you guys who have said nice things to us on social. And part of our social media strategy that I've spoken about in a previous webinar is the best way to humanize your brand is to simply say thank you to your audience. After we launched Insights, we thanked every single person that wrote to us on Twitter. This is an essential part of our social media strategy, and I highly encourage you to adapt this as well, because not only does it allow for higher organic engagement and follower growth, but creates a two-way feedback loop and allows you as a brand to really listen to your audience, internalize what they're saying, and do something about it.
So the next stage is talking about content marketing success. And the thing about content marketing is that it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. Results take time, but if you have the diligence to deliver great content at a regular cadence, it pays off in a big way. And this is a graph I never, ever get sick of showing. We analyzed our own customer base, and what we found was one consistent insight. There's a compounding effect to content marketing. And what this means is that if you publish consistently every day, month over month, the value of your content and your ROI will increase over time. So if you take a look at this graph from one of our Fortune 500 clients, the yellow section is the number of articles published every month. The blue section is the total articles viewed every month. And what you'll see is that their publishing cadence is consistent over the months. However, the number of articles viewed increases over time. And this is because articles published in early months continue to drive traffic over time, which is due to SEO improving the organic traffic to the site, but also building up a bank of evergreen content that continues to drive visitors. And also worth noting is that the page views, which is the gray line going up, also increases over time, which shows that even if your publishing cadence remains consistent, you'll see a compounding effect to engagement and traffic. And the bottom line of this is that the ROI of content marketing increases over time. And this is important when we think about paid traffic. So when we think about demand gen, content marketing allows you to earn your audience's attention versus just buying it. By investing in content marketing, you own the traffic and you reap the rewards as it continues to grow from your initial investment. Bought traffic, on the other hand, gives you faster ROI initially, but over time it costs more and without any of the compounding effect like content marketing. Now, I know what you're probably thinking at this stage. You're saying, that sounds great, but I just don't have the resources to achieve that volume of creation. Well, the thing is, at NewsCred, we're actually a pretty small marketing team. There's just 10 of us in a nearly 200-person organization. So we need to be the most efficient team out there to scale our content production. And that starts with having the right processes. So having efficient workflows, having proactive calendaring, and more. And this is where also having the right software can be the key. So for example, here's a screenshot of a workflow in our Content Marketing Cloud. This was a post from my colleague Marcus. And when we were publishing it, we had a simple 3-step workflow, which you'll see on the left with the green check marks. And this was to ensure that everyone who needed to be involved and needed to approve it and needed to sign off on it was all involved in a very efficient manner. And what this allows us to do is not just publish with confidence that everyone who needed to be involved was, but it also means that we don't get slowed down by things like having to work in and out of shared docs and things that just make everything inefficient. And finally, on this topic, publishing consistently doesn't actually require you to always create new blog posts. In fact, optimizing old posts can be just as valuable as creating new content. If you can improve the SEO score on your pages, you can actually have an exponential effect on your organic traffic, particularly if you can move a post from the page rank of 3 or higher. So some tips on how to do this is, 1, optimize old posts that have high engagement rate, but not necessarily high page views. You can also focus on posts that have an SEO page rank of 4 or 5. If you can move those posts into a page rank of 3, it has a massive difference on the traffic that comes in from them. And also look for posts that get a lot of search traffic but aren't necessarily in your top 50 to 100 posts. If you can make those posts better, longer, more valuable, you can increase the amount of views to them as well. And here's an actual example from our blog. Inside the red box, you can see this is a post that titled, an article that we posted called 15 Luxury Brands Winning with Content Marketing. And while the page views are actually pretty low on this one comparatively, we have a 63% engagement rate. Now, just in case you're wondering, an engagement rate is the percentage of people who are spending more than 30 seconds on a post. So what this tells us is that this is actually a solid piece of content. So there's one of 2 things that we should do with it. 1, maybe we just need to promote it more. Perhaps it's something that we actually just didn't give the right attention to when it first got published. Or 2, maybe we need to rewrite this post and actually make it better, make it longer, add more data into it, make it more visual, update it for newer times for a new year, and then redistribute it. And here's the last point that we're going to go through on this webinar, and this is an important one. We believe that content marketing has a huge opportunity to increase retention, to increase brand loyalty, and to increase upsell revenue. And in NewsCred's case, because we work with global enterprises, the ability for us to grow our relationships is hugely important. So what are people typically doing wrong? Well, too many businesses are focusing on transactional customer value, and they forget to invest in the customer experience post-sale. And in addition, if you can increase the lifetime value of a customer, this not only increases revenue, but it actually drives down your acquisition cost. So this is where a lot of people are falling short, and this is what it should look like. So in this graph, you'll see that the lifetime revenue of a customer should be 3 to 5 times the cost to acquire and retain them. So our attention has to shift towards the customer experience, and this is what happens post-deal. So what can we do to tip this balance? Well, if you look at this chart, and I do advise you to screenshot this one because there's a lot of valuable information here. What we're looking at is there are strategies like inbound marketing, which is up in the top left, and customer referrals actually drive your customer acquisition cost down. However, beneath that, in the red section, field sales and outbound marketing actually drives it up. So what we did at NewsCred is we focused on the top right-hand section, which is focusing on what can negatively impact revenue once a customer has become, once a prospect has become a customer. And these things are things like high churn rates, low customer satisfaction, and slow or ineffective onboarding. So this is where we had our big idea in 2015. Knowing that retention is largely decided in the first 30 days, we thought we could have the most value by making our onboarding process incredible. If you can empower customers to ramp up faster, you'll cut down on your own organization's investments in time and in resources. But how does content marketing actually affect customer retention? Well, in fact, it directly impacts it. So from our research, we can get a 41% higher renewal rate by focusing on this. We can get a 33% more likely to be upsold and 24% higher MRR than average. So what did we actually do to turn the dial on this?
So introducing NewsCred's Think Content University. This is going to be launching on NewsCred Insights in the next few weeks. We're giving you guys a sneak peek here. And while this will be available to everyone, we really designed it with our customers in mind. And what it is a premium training course taught by industry experts on all of the content marketing topics that we care about. We cover editorial strategy, distribution, ROI, and everything in between. And it's 6 hours of extremely tactical, super high-value content. And for our customers, we wanted to arm them with a solid content marketing strategy and show them exactly how to execute this strategy using our product. And taking everything that we learned from insights in our user testing, we wanted to make the user journey here very, very flexible. For example, we give you a clear outline of the course that you're about to take, including the timestamps of how long each section will take you to complete. And this was all designed with the user in mind. We've all been there. Sometimes you only have 10 minutes on the subway. Sometimes you have a few hours on a long Amtrak. And regardless, we wanted to give a structured learning path with the ability to jump around as you please. And part of this is allowing our customers to track their progress and easily pick up where they left off. This is just another way that we are aiming to personalize our learning experience to our customers' needs and allow them to grow their skill set in a way that they want to on the topics that they care about the most. And to close the loop, we are bringing our online and offline content together, and this is one of the biggest differentiators in NewsCred's strategy. We treat events as an extension of our content strategy. In 2015, the NewsCred marketing team held 95 events, and our organic and event channels represented 76% of all marketing-driven opportunities. And remember, our target customer is in the Fortune 1000, so we really need to get creative on how to build meaningful relationships over time with a small audience, and these are some of the ways that we're doing that. We have our Think Content University, which is our London-based initiative, which is a small group of marketers getting together for hands-on workshops and thought leadership dinners. We did our Think Content tour this past fall, and we stopped in San Francisco, London, and finished up in Chicago. We brought in local speakers and held hands-on discussion groups that were super, super tactical. And then finally, our Think Content Summit, which is our pinnacle event. This is by far our largest, with over 1,000 people attending over the course of 2 days. We have our Customer Summit on day one, and then the main event is held on the second day. And in the past, we've had speakers from BuzzFeed, Chobani, Visa, Intel, and GE, to name a few. And each attendee is hand-selected by us, so it's really the best and the best in terms of speakers, attendees, and content. And shameless plug, since we're already on the topic, registration for our 2016 Think Content Summit is now open. This will be hosted on June 2nd in New York. And we'll be circulating the link in our follow-up email to everyone here today. And we highly, highly encourage you to join us for a day of content marketing inspiration, tactical presentations, and networking with the best marketers in the space. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Liam to wrap it all up.
So we've covered quite a bit in this webinar, and before I even go into the wrap-up, don't worry, we will be sending out a slide share of all of these slides, and we will also be sending out a recording of this webinar following this when we're over, so you will have plenty of time to digest this in your own time. Just a quick wrap-through of the 5 different steps that we went through. So number 1 is that content is the core of our marketing strategy. I mean, this is fundamental that, great content is really, the solution. So, firstly, deliver great content, but build a framework that ladders up to the business goals and focus on how your content marketing actually contributes to them. And create content that your audience actually wants. So as Alexa showed with the Venn diagram, your content strategy should sit at the intersection of not just what your brand stands for, but also what your audience actually wants as well. And on that, deliver that content in a way that your audience wants it. So understand your channels, optimize them, and create an experience that is built with your audience in mind. And then, of course, content marketing success is all about consistency. Focus on consistent publishing through efficient workflows, and don't forget to optimize all of your old content as well. And then lastly, focus on retention just as much as acquisition. Remember that the lifetime revenue of a customer should be 3 to 5 times the cost to acquire and retain them. Focus on giving them an amazing experience, and you will reap the benefits in lifetime value. So that's it from us. I think we're going to take some questions because there seems to be quite a lot of them coming through. So let me just have a quick look. One of the ones that seems to be coming through a few different times is we talk a lot about creating content and about like custom content. And they have a question about licensed content, how that fits into our actual mix. So I'm going to let Alexa take that one.
Sure. So our weekly publishing cadence, we publish a new article once every weekday, so 5 pieces per week. And our breakdown is we have 3 original pieces on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays we have our licensed content to fill in. And licensed content is a great way to scale your content production. This is something that we have built a business around, and we really practice what we preach in that we use our licensed content and we hold our licensed content to the same standard that we hold our original content production. So our licensed content goes through the same scorecard that our original content goes through, and we only choose licensed pieces that really complement what our brand purpose and what our audience wants. And we really make sure that we hold ourselves accountable to that when choosing licensed articles.
There's also a question in here about events and how we actually tie that back into our measurement and how do we get the ROI. And that's actually an interesting question. So we approach this in 2 different angles. So events are actually a very high performing channel for us. Next to content marketing, it will be our better performing channels. So one of the things we do is we actually treat them the same way, and we work in Salesforce, and we make sure to actually track back an ROI against our events. So we set targets based on what our optimum cost per opportunity is, cost per deal is. And then but not all events are created equally. Some events are definitely accelerators. So we also try and factor that in. So for example, our summit, when we looked at data last year, we found that our summit actually touches a little under half of all the deals that we created in the year. So we try to make sure that we factor that in and not just look at the straight dollar to dollar from an event, and make sure we understand that it has value that extends beyond just the event itself. For big events like that, and for like some of our more laborsome like investments, we actually set up dashboards in Salesforce, and we make sure to keep a very open dialogue with our sales team because they're a very important part. So we make sure that the relationship between sales and marketing and the handoff process from all of the leads in an event are as smooth as possible, and we just monitor that relationship very closely. There's one more question. There seems to be a common theme going on how you actually set up frameworks for measurement and things, and how do you figure out your best performing channels and how do you measure them? Well, there's a few different ways that you can do that. One of the ones I would suggest is that you pick metrics that actually show intent and show that they will convert for you. And this differs for a lot of people. So if you're looking at your newsletter, a lot of people focus very simply on just looking at open rates, for example. But there are other things in there that are more important. So the click-through rate, for example, is a very important metric because open rate is, technically speaking, like how successful the subject line was, but it doesn't necessarily speak to the content in the email. So when you find metrics that show behavioral indicators, like whether or not they opened the email and then clicked through it to your website, they're the metrics you should be focusing on. Other things is setting up frameworks and scorecards for all of your different channels. So we use Google Analytics a lot in addition to our own metrics from our software. And we look for behavioral goals. So a lot of times we look for how many new newsletter subscribers we get on a daily basis. And the important thing is we watch how that trends over time. We don't just look at them in isolated, like how many did we generate this week. It's are we up versus last week versus the week before, et cetera. And we also look at differentiating between whether or not the goals that we see on the traffic are ones that are sales or whether they're content marketing related. So for example, when someone downloads a form, it's very easy to look in things like Marketo and see how many downloads you had, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they were content marketing because you also have sales forms. So we differentiate between sales and marketing forms, and the ultimate goal of that is to try to have a very clean understanding of what is content marketing and what is not content marketing. And we do this with our blog as well. We do this across the board. We look in Salesforce. We make sure to understand what is content marketing, and we compare it against our marketing channels. That's a very long-winded way, I know, of saying set up metrics that actually measure real intent and focus on those.
And to jump in also from a content side, if you're thinking this is great, but how do I get started? The first thing I would do is just say break down the silos in your organization. Talk to your sales team. Talk to your events team. Make sure that you have an open dialogue so that you have the measurement and the framework in place, and that as you start creating content and you start scaling that content, you always go back and make sure, is it measuring, is it proving ROI, and you really, really keep that flow going with the different parts of your organization to make sure that you are laddering all those up eventually to your company OKRs.
So we're actually kind of running up a little bit against the clock now. So there's a lot of questions coming in that are very specific, and I think we're going to try and see if we can find a way to talk about them afterwards so that we can kind of address them more individually. But one thing to look out for is we're actually going to have a recap of this webinar as well tomorrow on our blog, so keep an eye out for our newsletter. Shameless plug, if you have not signed up, please do sign up for our newsletter. And of course, like I mentioned, we will have a follow-up after this with a copy of all these slides and a recording. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank Alexa for joining me, and I hope this was a very useful webinar for you.